Welcome to Podcrushed. Well, that's about it. I think.
We're happy
Thanks
to
for
have
coming.
you.
Hello.
Yep, happy to have you. Now, but you have a question for us, don't you?
Well, today's guest, BJ Novak, is a real prankster. And I was curious, what is the best prank you've ever pulled off or the best prank that's ever been pulled on you?
I have.
Pen, you don't seem like a prankster.
I'm not even close.
Yeah.
Literally, April Fools to me is I cannot muster.
Yeah.
I cannot muster a single
Really?
F to give about pranks. Like it's.
Yeah.
I actually really admire people who do.
Yeah.
And by the way, somebody who may or may not be known for this, Blake Lively, was, as I recall, very serious about pranks. Oh, and that,
Really?
you know what's funny? I'm just thinking to myself
That's why you broke
that
up.
couldn't think it. No.
We finally have the real reason.
Oh, that's so good. The real reason, like I've been lying this whole time, just hiding. Oh, it's too painful. No, you know what? She pulled a remarkable prank. Have I never told you this?
No, tell us.
us.
So the reason this was impressive is because she got like many people involved and my team of representatives involved. So and my mom. I get an
Wow.
email just like, totally like, oh, there's this press item that we're trying to kill, but just so you know, like somebody thinks, or maybe they've convinced Steven Tyler, like thinks he's your dad.
From
so
Aerosmith?
whatever. Yes.
Oh
yes.
my God.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't remember the phrasing, but I just remember being like, well, didn't even think about it for a moment, because who would in their right mind think that that's true? Like, and then I think the publicist, like a few days later, she was like, this isn't going away. Like we're trying to kill it, but like
Liv Tyler wants to meet you.
Steven believes it. I think she said something like, it's getting a little bit weird because I think Steven believes it. And I was like, I mean, okay. All right, I don't know how to.
And you don't call your mom at this point to be like, did you ever have a fling with Steven Tyler?
No. Because it's like because also knowing my mom and it was just like not even.
Yeah.
Again, still not remotely thinking that it's true. And then my manager, I think, calls at the time too, and with the publicist, and they're like, so like he's adamant now. And I'm like, and at this point, I of course don't think it's true, but I'm just like, how could Steven Tyler believe this? Like, there's no way. You have to be kidding. Steven Tyler of Aerosmith thinks that I'm his, like, I can remember sitting at the table, like her breakfast table, well, the only table, where we would eat. And then I think maybe she suggested, call your mom. And my mom is so not an actress, so not a prankster either. And she's upset. And I'm like, Mom, why are you upset? Like, what? And then she takes a pause that is like, the pause that sold me.
Yeah.
And she goes, why do you think we moved out of Maryland?
Oh my God.
And I'm telling you,
God.
for something like 5 to 7 seconds, which is a long time.
Yeah.
For something like 5 to 7 seconds, I was speechless and my world was rearranging. And I was like, are
I'm
you fucking
Aerosmith's
kidding?
son.
Like, I am Steven
Am I
Tyler's
entitled to some
son?
kind of fortune?
No wonder I'm so musically gifted.
I was so like, and I think by the end of that 5 to 7 seconds, I was already thinking like, there's a way to play music here. Because I'd always wanted to play music, and I didn't want to exploit the man. I definitely didn't want to do that. But I was
Get
just
in the
like
studio with him.
for a second. I mean, that's a long time to think that your whole life is reordered.
Yeah.
It really
And then what
is.
happened at the end of
And
the
then
7 seconds?
I realized what day it was, and I was, because the rationale kicked in.
Yeah.
And then I think maybe it's like, she was a prankster, Blake.
Yeah.
And so I think I looked at her, and she probably at that point couldn't keep a straight face.
Oh
And I was
my
like,
God.
Fucking April Fools. And then she just,
That
I feel like there
so
might have been one other person there. I don't know who it would have been, but I hear people kind of like laughing and clapping, and I guess my mom too. And I was,
That's so funny.
I was impressed. I was like, wow,
Yeah.
you really put in a lot of work,
Yeah.
and it worked. For it to work at all,
Yeah.
that's hard.
That's amazing. Well, I don't want to tell my story anymore. That's so good.
Yeah,
We
it
just
doesn't
transitioned
compare.
into
It
the
doesn't
episodes.
involve at least
Right in.
two major celebrities. So.
Yeah, 3.
Yeah, we've got
Yeah.
today a prankster in his own right. I feel like you already know who this man is. I don't know what kind of introduction I could provide that would tell you more about him. But we have BJ Novak. He's a writer, director, actor, producer. He's a force. You know him, of course, from The Office. You also know him from films like Inglorious Basterds and The Founder. There's also there's the Mindy Project. He's written a children's book, a best-selling children's book. He also has his film Vengeance, which he wrote, directed, and starred in. And most impressively, what you may not know is that he is on today's episode of Podcrushed. Yeah, I did it.
Titular character. I just really wanted to say titular.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could tell, actually. I thought, there's something about that word.
Yeah. Stick around.
Welcome to Podcrushed. We're your hosts. I'm Penn.
I'm Nava.
And I'm Sophie. And I think we would have been your middle school besties.
Planning elaborate pranks on the principal's office. Shh.
Thank you so much for coming on, honestly. It's really, really a pleasure to have you. You are so beloved
likewise,
by so
Penn.
many. Yeah, man.
I have long or medium long been jealous of you because, take your pick of a reason, but my reason is that I read the book You, and I loved it, and I wanted to make it into a movie, and I pursued the rights.
No.
And I thought I should play Joe Goldberg. That's
You're
my
kidding
thing. It's
me.
like,
You would have been a good Joe Goldberg.
creepy guy in a bookstore. I can do this.
Yeah.
And I love the book by Carolyn Kepnes, and I looked into the rights, and Greg Berlanti had it, and the rest is history. And your show is obviously an incredible success for all the right reasons. But I had the same idea. What a great book!
That's so
That would be a great thing.
interesting. And so you wanted to make it a movie.
I saw it as a movie just because I wasn't creative. I saw book, movie.
Yeah.
Maybe it will be like Harry Potter, and there'll be a TV show and a movie. And we'll have
video
different
game,
verses, and you and I will have a crossover at some point.
Into the
The
universe.
fan verse will go crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
there's an obvious joke. The universe. That's if I had any more stomach to do Joe Goldberg for into my 40s, I would do that.
Yeah.
I would milk it. But
Yeah.
So you know a little bit about what we do here. We start at 12. We'll go in both directions, but just tell us a little bit about who you were at 12. How did 12-year-old BJ Novak see the world? What was he doing? Where was he?
12-year-old BJ Novak was trying to figure out the sudden transition from a world where nobody cared about what was cool and people only cared about what was fun into a world that suddenly required a self-consciousness that I hadn't had. I had a very fun childhood. I liked being funny. I liked goofing around with my friends and coming up with pranks and playing sports and, things like that. And I remember getting to middle school and kind of realizing the hard way, wait a second, there's this whole other hierarchy. There's something else in the air, there's like a social status. And I always remark when people say, did you sit in the front of the bus or the back of the bus? I sat in the middle of the bus, like most people. Like that's how buses work. Most of the space was in the middle. I wasn't like a cool rebel in the back of the bus. I wasn't a nerd in the front of the bus. I don't know, I was in the middle of the bus. But I just thought that was a good seat. I was in the middle. And that's also socially where I was. I wasn't a cool kid. I wasn't an outcast. But all of a sudden, I could tell that there was something else going on. And there were kids who remember there was a kid who wore K-Swiss sneakers.
Oh, K-Swiss.
I didn't understand.
Yeah.
I didn't understand why you wouldn't wear a sneaker that, you had seen a basketball player wear. Like, I didn't understand that there was style and symbolism of what you did and wore and who you hung out with. I was late to realize all of that. And then I really, really wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah.
But I had to kind of study it. And that didn't come naturally to me.
What was your entry point into it if you did manage to kind of break into that?
I remember a kid with K-Swiss sneakers.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I don't get it. They're just white sneakers. Why does everyone think,
I
why is
thought
everyone
they were
talking about
ugly.
this kid's
Yeah,
sneakers?
Yeah, but
See,
they were
but
such
you-
a thing.
The other thing that I remember being sort of a big recalibration was when Beverly Hills 90210 came out. And that was like the Luke Perry
Yeah.
original version, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And again, I thought of the world in terms of what's funny and fun. My family watched Cheers.
Yeah.
And then the other kids at school were all talking about Beverly Hills 90210. And
Brenda
all
and
the girls
Kelly.
had pictures. Yeah. All the girls had pictures in their locker of it.
Yeah.
I was thinking, this show isn't even funny. I don't follow. Why do you have pictures of this show? And so then I started watching it, and I had to go up to my parents' room because they would watch NBC sitcoms,
Yeah.
which is what I really liked. And then I would go to their room to watch 90210 to kind of study, what the hell is
Yeah.
everybody talking about? And I got it. I couldn't put it into words, but then I was like, okay, I'm feeling something.
Yeah.
I want to be cool like him. Oh,
Yeah.
Dylan's an alcoholic. I got to get alcohol. I got it. It was like hearing rock music. You feel it. You can't describe it. But I suddenly got moody,
Yeah.
cool,
Did you get a leather
sexy,
jacket?
vague. No, I could not afford that.
Yeah.
But fortunately, that was a very good time, the 90s, because those guys wore Gap. That was the cool
That's
brand.
true. Oh my
Right,
God, that's
that's
so
right.
true.
Will that ever happen again? That a broadly affordable brand will be the aspirational brand?
Yeah.
So the Gap was a little expensive back then. It was still hard to
true.
get Gap
It
stuff.
felt very
'cause we
nice
shopped at-
to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gap stuff was good. I think it's come down in price. Gap was a bit aspirational. Banana
Yeah.
Republic, forget it.
Yeah, it's true.
But I remember I could get a Gap thing now and then because generally you buy, if you want a white T-shirt, you get a 3-pack at Fine's Basement or
Yeah.
TJ Maxx or something. You don't go to the Gap for a T-shirt. That was very indulgent, but I had Gap T-shirt, Urban Outfitters.
Yeah.
You could buy stuff that kind of looked like the 90210 stuff. So I was studying it. So 90210 was my first entry, and it's also what made me want to be an actor.
Yeah.
Because I also did this math, skipping a step of those guys are really great looking. That didn't register to me. I was just like, oh, they're actors, and everyone's obsessed with them. So I guess I'll just do that. And then I actually got really into acting. Then I would go to the video store and rent videotapes of all the movies I looked up at the library as good movies. I feel like it sounds like I was very studious as I
Yeah,
say this
you're
out loud.
studying a lot and you're acing the exam, it sounds like.
Yeah, I was studying to be cool, and I would rent, Robert De Niro movies and Marlon Brando movies, and I loved them.
Yeah.
I genuinely loved them, and it's funny that, thinking how I could be like Luke Perry is what led me to, study Stanislavski. But that was my way in. I was like, okay, well, if that's what girls like, and that's what the K-Swiss guy is looking like, I guess I should do that.
How early on did you make the connection with comedy? Because it sounds like actually in the beginning you pursued I mean, I don't know, but it sounds like there was some kind of draw that was maybe more serious.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
It was superficial. The scheme in my head was I would be I'd be like a teen idol because, if you're an actor, that's the only
what I'll
actor I
just do.
heard of was Luke
Yeah.
Perry. I'll just do that, and then everyone will be obsessed with me.
Yeah.
So that was my 8th grade brain processing it. And then when I studied acting, I was like, oh yeah, I was into the more serious stuff. And I really did. I still do. I love, I saw One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and Taxi Driver in my basement on VHS tapes. And I was blown away. I'd never seen anything like that. So then I did get into that. For comedy was sort of like something I realized was my ticket to cool that I didn't expect. So my family is funny. As I was saying, my family still watches Seinfeld. My parents watch Seinfeld or Key and Peele every night.
Really?
Wow.
We are like a comedy family. We talk in punchlines and revere stand-up comedy and written comedy. And everyone always said that I was funny when I was a kid, but I thought of it as not an impressive thing to be. You know, it was just like saying you have brown hair. Like, okay, cool. You know, and then I remember a couple comedy things came out that were cool. The Simpsons was cool when that came out. And then I saw Pulp Fiction, which I wouldn't quite call a comedy, but it was very funny. And it was clearly very well written. And that was the thing in school. Everyone always said I was good at writing. I was like, okay, great. You know, better than not being good at it, but it didn't make a difference to me. And then suddenly I was like, wait, that thing that they said I was good at, maybe I could use that to be cool, to be the things that I suddenly care about now in 8th grade. So then I was like, wait, what were you saying? Did you say I was funny? You know, then I sort of got interested in being funny once I thought it might be cool, but I never thought twice. It was like my dad was funny. It was like, hey, you should be a dentist like your dad. Like, okay, sure, you know. And again, as a kid, I thought it was the best thing in the world. But then, you know, that brief 8th grade period when suddenly your world turns upside down, it took me a minute to find my footing in comedy again. Isn't that funny? You come full circle. Like, your only ticket is to be who you were all along.
That's true.
You know?
That's true.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's a nice thought.
You mentioned one of the reasons you were interested in becoming like a teen actor or an actor for teens was girls. That you noticed that's what they were into.
An actor as a teen. I wasn't thinking I'll be a teen idol and then
I thought you wanted to be a teen idol. I was like, you know, you didn't think that through because they would be teens and you'd be an adult.
I didn't think it through at all. And then I'd go back to Brown Middle School and be the coolest kid. Yeah, I didn't.
I was like, that
I didn't think it
for
through.
someone who did a lot of studying. I mean, it's a little.
Missed a couple.
No. What was your experience around like crushes, first love, heartbreak around that time?
It really, I had summer camp crushes and I would write letters. And again, that was, okay, I was much better at writing a letter, like a funny long letter, than I was at being suave at a campfire. So my camp crushes really came alive, you know, in the off season. I was made for this era of email, and again, I'd be the perfect Joe Goldberg if you retire the role, because I'm very good if that can be my method, way better than the in person.
Yeah.
You went to this summer camp consistently throughout middle school, right? From like 7th to 9th grade or 6th to 9th grade?
I went to Camp Roma, and I went a few summers, 7th, 8th, 9th, around then, yeah.
What happened at Camp Roma?
It was a bit of a free-for-all. I mean, it was supposed to have been a Jewish camp, and it was a Jewish camp, but I think it was supposed to be a little more pious than we took it. It was basically, as I remember, everyone just played basketball all day and had crushes.
Yeah.
So it was great. I loved it.
Yeah.
But then Stacy and Leora were my crushes, and I would write them letters.
Two at the same time? Or spaced out?
Yeah, but it was kind of, I wasn't cheating on. They were friends with each other. So I would I liked them both. I would write them both letters. They would tell me that Leora read me her letter out loud. Wow. And I'd be like, yes. I was kind of like, I didn't know which way it was going to go. It wasn't one single.
Did it go?
Crush.
Did it go a particular way?
I wasn't the math. I didn't think through the math.
They were more like an audience.
Yeah, I was like, oh, the closer you get to this, the better it will be, you know.
BJ, you mentioned pranks in your first kind of answer, and it seems like an important thread throughout your life. So I want to know, what's your first like prank that you're proud of?
The first prank that I'm proud of was 6th grade. Which I guess is middle school these days. It was the last grade of elementary school for us. Yeah. But we had, again, this was a crush where I didn't do the math. I don't know how I would have closed with this crush. Yeah. Not that you even like get a date in 6th grade, but there's a girl I had a crush on. And we, in library class, you would take out a book and they'd have a library card, right? And then if you had an overdue book, they would read who had overdue books in front of everyone to like shame you into bringing your book back. Do you know what I'm talking about? Can you even picture this, or have I lost you?
I can totally picture this. No, totally picture this. Yeah.
It makes sense? Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, for this, I stole one of the blank book cards from the library. Yeah. And on my dad's typewriter, I typed out a fictional book called like from BJ with love or something.
Oh my gosh, this is
Very
creative.
elaborate.
I signed, and I got a library stamp too, and I
Yeah.
signed it out. This is so random. I signed it out in the girl's name, overdue, and put it back with the overdue book, so the library would read it out. I don't even, if she is somehow listening, she'll be like, that's what that was, because I think it was this crazy mystery in her class, to make it seem like she had taken out this book, like she was interested in a guy like me or so. I don't know what I was thinking. It was, again, really vague. And you have a look on your face like, I don't know what to make of this. What do you make of this? Again, I didn't think things through fully. I had a lot of half-baked vibes. I hope that wasn't harassment. It felt funny to me, and it felt like a message.
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't make it wouldn't make the show.
Yeah.
It's not that bad. But as I say it, I'm sort of like, it doesn't sound right, but there was no goal such as maybe we'll hold hands and go to a movie. You know, like, right. I don't know what the fuck I was
You're a
going
writer.
for. Again, it was like a prank combined with a crush.
Yeah.
It wasn't a grand gesture.
So were
You
you
know?
there when they read it out loud? Was it the point for the librarian to be like, to BJ with love or whatever it was called, and then the girl realized that you loved her? Was that sort of what was happening in your mind?
No, that's, again, I didn't even think of that through, because at least that would have, you could give notes on that plot. You'd be like, great. I don't think she's going to feel love. I don't think she's going to like that publicly. I don't think that's going to get you where you want to go. Maybe the book title is different, or maybe you just do something else.
Yeah.
But I didn't even have that. I didn't have that. But you know, I'm remembering now a much more, I don't want to say traumatic story, because people have true traumatic stories, but how do I begin this? I was famous in my middle school for this dating story that never happened. So we're back to 7th grade. I'm noticing the 90210 fandom. I'm studying acting. There's a school play. Okay. It's Oklahoma. And I auditioned for the school play, and I get the lead, and I'm a 7th grader. And it's like, whoa, the 7th grader got the lead. I was definitely like on my way. Right.
Yeah.
And there was this girl in the play. She had a small part, and her name was Melissa Prince. And again, I didn't notice things like this, but Melissa Prince was an 8th grader and famously hot, I guess. I wasn't even totally clocking things like that.
People say.
You know? Right. I certainly thought, looking back at, yes, she was attractive, but I wasn't even thinking in those terms, really.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden a rumor went around that Melissa Prince wanted to go out with me, BJ Novak, a 7th grader. And I felt my ego was like so big, and I was also so terrified. Because everywhere I went, people would say this thing, and I barely knew who she was, but I could tell from their expression that she was like gorgeous and like this was crazy.
Wow.
And that I come out of nowhere. Again, I wasn't like a cool kid, but like she had set her sights on me. And then I knew her friend group, Franny Kaplan, was her friend that I was friends with. Now, my crush was on Franny, who was a better match for me. But Franny was trying to coordinate. We were all going to go to the movies. I wish I could remember this movie because it would be so funny. And like everyone's mom was going to drop us off at the Cleveland Circle Cinema in Brookline, Massachusetts. And so I'm waiting by the phone for like the plan, because we don't have cell phones. You wait by the phone. I'm literally waiting by the phone all weekend. I never get a call. And then Sunday, I get a call from Franny that everyone says I stood Melissa Prince up. And everyone can't believe that I stood her up.
So now you're even cooler.
I like the way you're thinking, but no. But that was it.
Like he can't
That
do
was
that.
it. And then Melissa Prince was going to dump me. And then the first time I ever spoke to Melissa Prince was when she walked up to me in 8th grade in my homeroom to dump me. I had never spoken to her.
That was the first time you ever spoke to her. That's amazing.
And I took it, my heart was pounding, and I was so guilty. I was like so ashamed. In retrospect, I was like, this all happened to me.
Yeah.
But I was like, I felt so horrible that I had stood her up. I blew it. I just nodded. I didn't say a word. The whole thing happened to me. And then for the rest of middle school, the rest of junior high, the legend about me, the lore was I don't know what you called it, went out with, dated. I don't think it was dated. It certainly wasn't hooked up. I had dated Melissa Prince, but stood her up, and she dumped me.
Wow.
And I was like, didn't you date Melissa Prince? Is like, that was my first version of working on The Office.
Yeah.
That was like for 2 years. I got, didn't you go out with Melissa Prince?
Wow.
I don't know what she's up to now. That was the only time I ever spoke to her.
Yeah.
Wow, you never cleared it up.
and,
You just it just
So,
was what it
Pen,
was.
what do you make of this?
What I love, like the 12-year-old me is like, to the 12-year-old you is like, bro, you got something here. You got to work that. Like that is part of your mystique now. There's a way. Now, by the way, the 12-year-old me did not think in these kind of transactional terms at all.
No, but your
I'm
great
just
insight
thinking,
was
like,
you're even cooler now.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
crazy.
I mean,
You're so
I'm-
right.
I mean,
I had no swag.
but then of course, something about being cool, it seems preternatural. It's like I was not a cool 12-year-old, as you're saying. You were not a cool, like, I think typically the people who come on this show, we're not getting people who are cool in middle school. That's sort of the point. So, but there is this thing, like the person who looks good in a pair of K-Swisses, because let's be real, they were ugly. They were ugly. And
I still don't know.
but there were those kids who looked good in K-Swiss, and they knew. This is the thing about coolness that seems so kind of ruthless. It's like cool kids just know. I feel like they just know. And you weren't, and I'm sorry, but you weren't cool. And so
Yeah,
That's
no,
his
I know.
final pronouncement. Yeah.
The final, like from one uncool kid to another.
And you know
like,
what's even worse now is like when I say I was in the middle of the bus, I like studied like, okay, I could easily figure out more or less. Okay, I can wear a Gap t-shirt. That's cool enough. You know, the sort of mid sort of fashion that prevented me from being an outcast. Also, now, like that's cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like looking back, the kids that like did not give a fuck.
Yeah.
They wore like sweatpants to school and didn't give a fuck what people thought. Like those now we see how cool those people are.
Yeah.
And the K-Swiss kids will always be the K-Swiss kids. So the only people that are losers, real losers, are the people in the middle like me who are like, I think this might work. Come on. Like, I need something for the school dance, something that says, I'm not planning the dance, but I'm also
I'm
good
here.
at talk. I'm also here, you know? Yeah.
Before we move on from pranks, I do want to hear about this prank that was recently in the news that was very elaborate. You pulled off a prank at the Boston MFA, the Museum of Fine Arts, that you were recently pardoned for. It's not your everyday prank. Can you tell us more about it, and then also how you...
And like every detail, what inspired it? Why did you
Please,
do
yeah.
it? What happened?
How did you do it?
Yeah.
A friend and I had gone to the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, which looking back, what a sort of classy group of teenagers we were that we would think like, oh, let's go to the museum, see what's playing. So we went to the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston just on a summer day, and they had an audio cassette tour called Tales from the Land of Dragons, which was a ancient Chinese art exhibit. And you got, in those days, it was like an actual sort of Walkman style cassette player with a cassette in. And you rented that for $5 and put the headphones on, and it took you through. And one of us got the idea, why don't we take one of these tapes, make our own tour, and then replace the tapes with our tour? And so we did that. We took the tape home, transcribed where everything was on the tour, and then we recruited a narrator, a kid in our school with a very deep accent, and we got ancient Chinese music on a CD from the Newton Free
is
Library.
incredible.
And
This is so elaborate.
we wrote a new tour and recorded it and printed out identical labels on stickers.
What?
And put those on tapes.
Well, hold on, wait.
And
How
we
old were you?
we were 17.
This is like a
That
high
is-
school heist movie.
Well,
Like the level of elaboration.
I
It's
feel
incredible.
like if you wrote about it in a college essay, it would get
Yeah.
you into college.
Yeah,
like it's
yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's so good.
yeah, it's so good.
It's still the proudest thing
Yeah.
I've still the thing I'm most proud of.
Yeah.
So we got the stickers, we duplicated, then we got 15 friends to go take the tour one summer day, each of them with a tape in their pocket. And during the tour, they would just sort of discreetly pocket the original tape, replace it with the new tape, then return it. The guard would rewind it for the next group.
Wow.
And the
Oh my
next group
gosh.
got our tour, which, if I may, one of the proudest, one of the things I'm proudest of in my comedy writing career is that the first 3 minutes of the tape were identical. So
Smart.
you are deep in this tour
Yeah.
when the
Yeah.
narrator starts going off the rails.
That's so
Insulting
smart.
the art. Thank
That
you.
is-
Thank you
that's
for getting it.
really
I'm still
good.
proud of this. So it's one thing if they put on the tour and immediately goes crazy. If you're
Yeah.
in the middle of a tour, you're kind of zoning out.
Yeah.
You look at the art, and then he starts insulting the art, and then insulting the museum,
Oh my
and then
gosh.
like lashing out at his wife, who's like in another
Yeah.
room where he's recording it, and you're like, what is going on? And it got crazier and crazier and
Oh
more
my God.
more inappropriate. And we returned those tapes, and then because we were good kids, we left the original tapes in a bag in a locker and left like a ransom note that they would find later. It says, your original tapes are in locker 16. And the Boston Globe ran a story on it, what had
Wow.
happened. And that was just sort of museum lore.
What was the tone of that story?
The tone was bemused.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bemused and suspicious that it said the museum was investigating the company that made the
Oh
tapes.
my gosh. So you
we
like
knew
got
we were
away
free.
with it completely.
And then every time I'd go back to Boston over the years, I'd say, did someone once change? We got away, and then I kind of gradually couldn't resist
yeah.
like a serial killer, not serial killer, but like
Yeah.
the guys who have like a signature.
Yeah. Serial killer.
You know, I couldn't resist. I kept going back to the scene of the crime. I'd always go to the museum when I visited Boston and say, didn't someone once
Oh my gosh.
change this tour? They'd be like, it was this exhibit, and here's what happened. It was lore at the museum.
Wow.
And then finally I was on a talk show and I told the story and confessed to it. And then since then the museum has known that it was me, and they invited me to speak. And I said, if you pardon me, I will speak. So the museum issued me a pardon.
Wow.
And my old high school friend and I gave a talk on sort of art and pranks, and it was really, really fun, full circle moment to be back at the museum.
Hello, pod crushers. Have you tried Zocdoc yet? It's our go-to place to find and book doctors who not only make you feel comfortable, but actually listen to you. With Zocdoc, you can choose from tens of thousands of doctors, and each one has verified patient reviews, which is huge. So you know the vibes are good before you even get to meet them. Zocdoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare highly rated in-network doctors near you, and you can instantly book appointments with them online. We love using Zocdoc. They've taken all the annoying calling and administration out of the booking process. Once you find the right doctor, you can book them on the spot. No more awkward phone calls, just a few clicks and you're set. We're talking about top-rated, patient-reviewed, credible specialists, and you can filter specifically for those who take your insurance, which is a huge thing for me, and doctors that are located near you. We use Zocdoc all the time, and we know you're going to love it too. Go to Zocdoc.com/podcrushed and download the Zocdoc app for free. Then find and book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/podcrushed. Zocdoc.com/podcrushed.
BJ, you sort of we have like a unique, perfect segue with you from high school to career, because you went to high school with John Krasinski, and you guys actually wrote a play together. Is this true?
It was the senior senior year of high school. Yeah. It was an original satirical show. It was like an annual school tradition that was based on sort of a parody of the teachers and the school. And I don't know why they let us do it. And I don't think they let them do it anymore, but
After
we
you
did
guys.
it.
Yeah.
And it was very fun. And, you know, it got all the like the whole school did it, not just the theater kids, you
Yeah.
know, like the athletes say, like
Oh,
everyone
that's so
had to be in the
cool.
senior show.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was, I think that's sort of how it's meant to be. I think that's what theater used to be, right?
Yeah.
It's like everyone's goofing off.
What was your path from Harvard to Punk'd? Because I feel like Punk'd also at the time that it came out was a unique, like the coolest
It really
way that you
was.
could be in comedy. Like you really achieved your goal.
That was it. I remember being on Punk'd and another actor said to me, this could really lead to something. And I said, lead to something? Like,
I've arrived.
we're pulling pranks on MTV. Like, whatever happens after this is not gonna be
It was
like
huge.
this.
Yeah.
It was huge.
was
Weren't
huge.
you? I mean, you guys were actually getting huge celebrities.
You
on
got like
that, right?
Beyonce and stuff. You got like the biggest celebrities.
I
of the
wasn't
time.
there for that one, but it was so enormous. Ashton Kutcher was so enormous
Yeah,
as a
yeah,
star.
that's right, right.
And I, again, Penn, from total obscurity at that point, I had started out as a staff writer on a show called Raising Dad, starring Bob Saget, who became a dear friend, on the WB, I think it was the network then. And it was a very bland show. I was very lucky to have a job, but it was stifling. And it didn't feel like it was a path to much, even though I was on the Paramount lot on an official TV show, getting very well paid at a very young age. Like it wasn't like Next Stop The Simpsons or anything, you know, it was sort of this very family show. But Bob Saget, I thought, had a really cool life. He did stand up and he starred in things. And I had stopped thinking about acting. But when I saw Bob, I was like, wait a second, all these people, I'm seeing the theme of sort of I study and what other people do to be cool. And then I'm like, oh, what do I already like to do? Which I should have just done in the first place. But I was like, okay, how did Bob just drives up in a Mercedes, like makes jokes for 5 minutes in the writer's room. Everyone kisses his ass. And then he like drives home and he gets paid more than anybody. He's the only guy having fun. How do I do that? It's like, okay, well, Bob is a stand-up. Okay. So I can write jokes. That's what I do here all day. I can say jokes. Like, you know, I've been in plays and stuff. I guess I'll just write jokes and say the jokes and be a stand-up and see what happens. So I started doing that. And then, as with the sort of high school acting, then I fell in love with it. Then I watched all the great stand-ups. I'd always been a fan of comedy, so I was already familiar. But then when I really studied, I sort of was in awe of it as an art form and wanted to be as good as I could be just for the sake of it. And I started doing it. It wasn't very good for a couple of years, but kept going. And then I started getting some traction, and a producer for Punk'd on MTV. He was looking for sort of the next. Dax Shepard had just been retired because he got too famous to pull the pranks. Dax was the first and still most iconic of the prank pullers. So they had to replace Dax. So they were searching around for comedians, and I was just right place, right time.
Yeah.
My act had finally taken off, and I was 24, and they say, who's the next young comedian? So I got an audition and improvised the audition and got the job. And then here I am with, you know, the coolest guy in the world, you know, in 2004, Ashton Kutcher, and pulling in all of these huge stars, and you get one take. It's the best acting training in the world if you think about it, because you get one take.
Yeah.
And the other person can't ever know you're acting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Like,
amazing.
That is
what
amazing.
a challenge.
Yeah.
You know, you have a character, a motivation. You need to improvise funny lines. You need to show some arc, like all of it. And if you ever are unconvincing, the whole thing is over.
Wow.
I remember one time we were doing a prank on Tommy Lee. I was so scared.
Yeah.
So I was going to jump in front of his car, a stuntman, and get hit by the car. And then I was going to pop out as a paparazzi who had pictures of him killing someone.
Oh my God.
Or maybe just hitting. I think just hitting, because the guy was like, what the hell? So he didn't die. He didn't die.
Yeah.
But hitting somebody.
Yeah.
And I was gonna extort Tommy
Oh my God.
for the pictures.
PJ.
Oof.
And I'm like, this is a tough guy.
Yeah.
This is a guy who will get violent with.
Yeah.
And it sounds amazing, but okay. And I remember I had my driver's license in my pocket because I didn't want my wallet on me. I just wanted to like be as light as possible. I figured I should have my driver's license. And when we finished the prank, I took my driver's license out of my wallet and it was crumpled like an old dollar bill.
Oh my
like
God.
I had somehow nervously like done that
Wow.
because I was so scared. So
How-
yeah, it was definitely like, it was the hardest job you could have as an actor in that sense, but it was also, as a prankster, it was the easiest because you didn't even have to come up with it.
Yeah.
They just hand it to you. It was
Yeah.
incredible.
Right.
And then what's your path to The Office? And is it true that you were the first person cast on that show?
I was the first person cast, not the most important person cast. It's not like they built it around me. I happened to be the first person cast for the smaller role of Ryan. What happened was, so then I was doing stand up around town and on Punk'd. And yet again, I mean, this was sort of the way, maybe still is the way it worked. Casting directors and networks, they look around, oh, who are people talking about?
Yeah.
Who have you seen? And I ended up at a showcase of stand-up that Greg Daniels, who was creating the American version of The Office, saw me at.
Yeah.
And he asked for a meeting and he said, I really liked the way you paused between the jokes. It felt like you thought you were better than people. And he at least said, I like the way you pause between jokes. I have this idea that maybe we could have a temp who's just a temp, but he kind of thinks he's better than everyone. And
Yeah.
I thought that what you were doing might be good for that. And I thought, oh, that sounds great. And he said, and I know you're a writer too. I'd love to read your writing. And so I had written a spec script and I sent him that. And then at the time, The Office was still a ways off and I was getting other offers. But I had this meeting with Greg and I really wanted to do that one show. And everyone, by the way, said not to because it was a remake of a British show. And everyone thought it was a suicide mission and we were going to ruin it.
Wow.
But this meeting with Greg, he had been so inspiring and his values were so good about comedy. I really wanted to work with him. And the only way I could get on The Office, I was like, could you just make me like the smallest tentative offer now in advance? So I got an offer. Okay, you can act in the pilot. And if it becomes a series, you can be a writer. And so that's why I was the first cast, but it was a very small and non-pivotal role. But yes,
Yeah.
that is true.
So I guess like I'm curious about this evolving relationship between writing and acting and now directing for you, you know? Like how because directing, I suppose, would have been the last thing to formally emerge, but you've of course been directing things clearly in this way, you know, you've been producing and directing essentially, like you even started with the pranks. So I'm curious about how that's been evolving for you.
Well, the incredible advantage I had is that the training on The Office, I don't know if people get that anymore in the sense that it was 22 episodes a year. It had to be mainstream enough to play to sort of a broadcast audience back then on NBC. But it also had to pass as a documentary. Like I was saying about Punk, like it actually was quite hard to do it right. And Greg Daniels, who really, I think both strategically, so the show could last many seasons, and morally, because he was a good person who wanted to be a mentor, taught everyone how to do everything. So I wasn't the only actor writer. Mindy Kaling was a actor writer. Paul Lieberstein was an actor writer. And then Steve Carell wrote a script at one point. A lot of the actors started directing on The Office, and a lot of the writers started directing on The Office. So it really was this thing where the people who knew The Office were taught how to do lots of different things in many cases. And it was a way to keep the show going. I mean, there was 200 episodes of that show.
Wow.
And it was the best thing that could have happened to people, especially like me and Mindy at the early stage of our career, that we were expected, okay, it's not done when you hand in your script. You go to the edit bay, you work with the editor, you do a cut of the episode, and then you direct and you say action and cut. It's very easy in the scheme of things to direct an episode of a TV show that is already working, that's already up and running, that you already know pretty well.
Yeah.
I don't know, Penn, if you ever directed one of the shows you've been on, but you know what I mean.
I did. Yeah, I did. And I fully agree. It's like, you know, the only reason I thought I could do it while I was also starring in the thing was because it's like, well, I already know this so well.
Yes, you still have to take it seriously. You still have to take it
course.
seriously, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a great way to learn to direct. And then you realize so much of directing is just not being scared to direct. Someone told me, it was Al Ruddy, who produced The Godfather, that they made that series about. I met him and told him I wanted to direct. And he said in his gravelly voice, I quote it all the time. He said, you only have to know two things to direct: what you want and how to get it. I thought that is so true. It's true about everything.
Yeah.
But it's especially true about directing. If you know what you want, which most people don't,
Yeah.
you know, if you know what you want and you know how to get it, which is also hard, but not as hard as the first, then you can get anything, because it means you picture it in your head and you ask people for help. Or Penn, if you're already on the show, you know how to get that kind of performance or that kind of shot or that kind of joke or moment between characters, because someone will know, and you know what you're asking for and how to lead. And so directing came very naturally from that sense, from having done it on The Office and having a sense, oh, okay, if I know what I want and I know how to get it, which generally means working well with people, understanding what everyone else's job is, then you can do it. But honestly, I've always felt that why the writer-actor thing was so natural for so many people in The Office, it all is the same thing to me, more or less. Even acting, directing, writing, it's all just showing people what you have in mind, you know, and seeing if you can communicate. Here's what I think is funny. I can do it with words in the script. I can do it with my facial expression. I can do it with exactly when the camera goes to that reaction shot. But it's all just expressing your sense of humor or sense of drama or whatever. So I think directing is easy if you know what you want and how to get it, but you need to learn in every context.
And how was the leap to directing? Was Vengeance the first feature film that you've directed?
Yeah, it was. It was very exciting to be so fully in something. I mean, in every way, to be in it as an actor, but to have written the script, to be directing it, it was, I'm not an athlete, but it felt very athletic in the sense that you can't think about anything else. Your body is in it. You wake up in the morning immersed in it. You go to bed at night, like thinking, reflecting, but also training for the next day.
Yeah.
You're fully in the world, what the world looks like, what the setting is. And it is actually easy in a way if you're that intense about something. It's like being in a meditative state. If you go so deep, it's often easier for me to go all in than it is for me to consult on somebody's TV show, which is easy in a different way. But in a way, it's easier to go all in.
That resonates with me when I, you know, the role of this character, Joe, on my show, You, is so central to it. So when I was directing, I felt like I was just, oh, well, I have literally no time or bandwidth for anything else, actually, you know. But this I can do, you know, it's just 100% in. And there is something about it, you're right. It's like, it's very athletic. I mean, of course, in that case, I'm not writing. But you really do. I mean, you have to be able to answer every single question there is, and then you're in every shot, and you're setting up every shot. And it's like, this is it's insane. I wouldn't want to do this for very long, but once you're in it, you're just like, all right, this is the boiling water, and you know, we're just going.
Yeah, and it's hard for me to imagine that you would have made a wrong decision when you're in the state you're describing.
Yeah,
you know?
it's intuitive.
You know.
Yeah,
you know.
It's true.
There's a line in Vengeance that I wanted to ask you about where your character is talking to Ashton Kutcher's character, who's a record producer, and you are writing for a podcast that you're creating, and you ask him for some writing advice. You say, if you were to give me some advice, what would it be? And he says something, I'm not quoting it exactly, but something along the lines of like, well, no one actually ever writes. You are just translating. You listen to the world and you repeat back what you hear. And that really resonated. And it made me wonder, what are if it resonates for you, which I assume it does since you wrote it, but what are your sources of inspiration?
I think they always have to surprise me. I do believe in, it's funny, you always have to give your best lines to the villain. all the Bond villains, they always say the wisest things their writer has to share, I think.
Yeah.
It's just anything that catches me by surprise. I have a notebook with me at all times, and I'm always just writing down whatever catches me by surprise.
BJ, you also created a show called The Premise, and there was an episode that really, I thought they were all so brilliant and interesting and so different, like more different from one another than I would have expected, even tonally. Yeah.
Yes, than anyone knew what to do with, but, but thank you.
It's like, I've never seen anything like this. But there was an episode called A Moment of Silence that was particularly like gripping. And I wondered if you could share with our listeners what the premise of that episode was and what the reaction was.
Oh, sure. Well, the premise was a very short-lived show that I did on FX, an anthology show where I wrote all the episodes, and each one was sort of an experiment of sort of a wild idea taken seriously, all sort of set in the present day. And Moment of Silence was about a father of a school shooting victim. The show really plays out the sort of slow dawning of this father in grief who seems to be joining the NRA as a spokesman, which is the greatest PR coup, that the father of a school shooting victim would join the NRA as a spokesman. And then it seems to be that he's just trying to get security clearance so he can take revenge from within the NRA at the headquarters. And his coworker, who is a wonderful friend of his, who is a lifelong NRA member, is the one who's trying to coax him out of his grief, but is also the one who's realizing, I think he's going to pull something and I need to stop it. And it ends up with this sort of showdown at the building where you're trying to figure out what his intentions are. So, in a way it's a comedy premise because it's such a wildly provocative idea, but it's obviously a very dramatic execution of it.
Yeah.
It was really an acting piece because I really wanted to see what it would be like to be the person on either side of that, honestly.
Yeah.
And it was such the dynamic between those two was so good. I hope they act together again someday.
We're at our last question.
Just going back to 12-year-old BJ, if you could go back to him, what would you say or do?
Just be yourself, but he'd never listen.
Yeah.
Unless it was really me. And maybe if I brought some an iPhone or some proof or something, but I promise, man. But I think, I feel like your question is what message would I give? The message to me is so obvious. The message is coolest thing you can do is be yourself. The best thing you can do is be yourself. The thing that you will get the most reward for is to be yourself as much as you can be. The thing that will make you happiest is to be yourself. That's so obvious to me that all I can think about is how do I phrase it? Because I know I heard that advice so often.
Yeah.
And I thought it was the blandest, most phony advice I never listened to that I had to come full circle to. So all I can think of is how do I phrase it so a 12-year-old would be like, that's cool advice,
It's so true.
I don't know how to phrase it, but I know what the message
Luke Perry
is.
has a message for you.
Yes.
I'm just imagining you with a set of slides, and then you'll do this, and then you'll do this. And he's like, okay, maybe.
But I'd say, if I did do a slideshow, I'd say all the things that worked out best for you worked out because you forgot about everybody else and just goofed off as yourself.
Yeah.
You just told the wackiest joke you could think of on stage. You wrote a children's book because you wanted to make a particular 2-year-old laugh.
Yeah.
You did a prank. All of the times that you stop trying to be cool and just be yourself will lead to your quote unquote coolest moments.
Yeah. Did you write it for one child? That's really sweet.
Yeah, I wrote it for my friend's 2-year-old.
That's so cute.
Who immediately when it ended said, now let's read a book with pictures. But I didn't give up.
That's so cute.
Well, this was so lovely, BJ.
Yeah, thank you so much, man. It's an honor to have you. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
Thank you, Penn. Great to talk to you and to both of you too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sophie and Nova.
We are so excited that you can now listen to Podcrushed ad-free on Amazon Music. In fact, you can listen to any episode of Podcrushed ad-free right now on Amazon Music with an Amazon Prime membership.
If you don't cry, we'll consider it a failure. So we're going to do our best to just like probe. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you cry
But
easily,
honestly-
BJ?
I'd say medium.
Okay.
I wouldn't say easily,
Yeah.
but
We're going to work for it.
don't be shocked if it happens.